After a very eventful first sprint race of the season, Formula One now continues the Chinese Grand Prix weekend. We progress to Grand Prix qualifying. Shanghai International Circuit hosts the second round of the championship in 2026 as we ease back into the traditional hour-long session to set the grid for the 19th running of the Chinese Grand Prix. It's 3.3 miles. We'll put 56 laps on the board for tomorrow. 4 active aero zones for the low drag configuration these cars require, and during qualifying you have access to overtake mode throughout. Lots of recharging. The maximum allowed 9 megajoules across the circuit's duration. It's the C4, the C3 and the C2 tyre, the soft, the medium and the hard. Whether you've got new sets available, some midfielders have prioritised different strategies going into this hour, but at the front, the question remains, who can beat Mercedes? George Russell, since Saturday in Melbourne, has topped every single session in Formula One. Let's see if anyone can change that. As we give you a look at the conditions, this is the enormous, ginormous paddock here in Shanghai. It is 32 degrees track temperature. It's gone up once since we made that graphic, and it is 17 degrees air temperature. The grandstands are packed. We are ready to get the hour underway. We are a couple of minutes away from the second Formula One action on track today, which was the frenetic sprint race to start things, but there you go. That's how full the main grandstand is here. And we are speaking to you from the very top row of that grandstand as we reset the battle once again. The key thing after Russell was top of practice and sprint qualifying and the sprint race is that everyone has now been able to take their learnings, as is so fashionable to say these days, into the rest of the weekend, and we'll see whether Lewis Hamilton can get ever closer to the Mercedes. In the commentary box, I'm Alex Jakes, alongside me once again David Coulthard and Jolyon Palmer. DC, we move to qualifying. All the drivers, all the teams say a strange balance to go racing and then click back into quali mode.
Yeah, this is not the first time, sorry, struggling to get my words out there, not the first time we've had sprint, but somehow, especially here, it feels, as we're in this new world of Formula One, that it's been a lot busier, and it's like just come out of the sprint and we were thoroughly entertained as they found their way to best race around this racetrack. And it's a good opportunity for the likes of Max Verstappen, Red Bull, to make adjustments to the car now. They were massively off the pace in qualifying, I think 1.7 away. So opportunity for them to take a big leap forward. But if you're Mercedes, of course, where you're feeling pretty happy with life, this is not a big opportunity. Arguably, you could make an adjustment that actually makes it worse.
Parc Fermé rules have been opened, so yeah, everyone's been looking at what they could do. They have got a buffer, which is nice for Mercedes, but they are still wary about race performance, particularly for tomorrow, where Ferrari showed that they were kind on their tyres, and 19 laps, or even less than that with a pit stop earlier, is a lot easier than 56 for tomorrow. So everyone is still fine-tuning their car. Remember, there's an intra-team battle as well at Mercedes. You've got one side of the garage desperate to get onto terms with the other side of the garage. Antonelli here with a good chance to reset, put everything he's learnt together and start to put a bit more pressure on George Russell.
Yeah, a couple of little mistakes from him in the Grand Prix, of course. Bit of contact with Isaac Hadjar and then ran a little bit wide at the safety car restart. But good opportunity for a reset, and let's see who can deliver the fastest lap this afternoon.
Okay, we are getting closer to a green light at the end of the pit lane, and you can see back in the fast lane Nico Hülkenberg, who started his Formula One career 16 years ago this very day and was a retirement from our sprint race earlier on. There's Valtteri Bottas, a 10-time pole position holder in Formula One in the Cadillac, who ventures out onto the circuit. His teammate earlier on lost the engine cover. It wasn't particularly easy to tell that he'd lost the engine cover because it's a dark, that side of the car is the car in shade when it comes to the Cadillac livery. But yeah, it wasn't just the barge board, which we did pick up. He also lost the engine cover on the back straight, so that's why there was so much debris. Yeah,
it was almost like a skeleton car, wasn't it? Completely cut away on the backside. But actually, all credit to Cadillac. That was the same earlier on, where they were first out onto the track. It's kind of statement of intent. Now, they've got a few seconds between them and finishing first, but I like the mindset, be first out.
If you can't finish first, at least start first. And he's got a nice clear track ahead of him, Valtteri Bottas. I'm looking forward to seeing Cadillac's development over the year, even through this weekend. Can they get a bit closer? There's nearly 2 seconds actually from the pace that we saw from the Cadillac to the pace of the best Aston Martin, bearing in mind that there was a good chunk between Alonso and Stroll. So they've got plenty to make up, but they've also got so much more to learn than everyone else. Their baseline is very, very young. They're starting this team from scratch. They're learning more with every single lap. Well, you could put Aston Martin in the same camp when they've barely run the car as well this year. But yeah, experienced drivers trying to lead the way and getting straight out on circuit.
So 6 drivers going to fall in the first part of qualifying, which goes back up to the traditional hour-long session, which means we had 18 minutes to start, and 6 cars will fall at the end when the checker flag waves and everyone completes their laps as Valtteri Bottas heads out. And if you head out first, you do tend to get the majority of the airtime. I'm sure it's a coincidence. Others still peeling out of the pit lane to begin their session. Valtteri Bottas had a huge chance to win this Grand Prix back in 2018 when he was racing for Mercedes. It was a strategic call that day. The Mercedes went on by, the Red Bulls put the soft tyres on, and it was a Daniel Ricciardo special to roar through the field and take the win. He was overtaken at this very corner. Sorry for the bad memories, Valtteri, but he's back in Formula One after a year on the sidelines.
Hopefully he's not listening. Hopefully he's dialed in and putting the bad memories behind him. Great bit of wheel-to-wheel action on that day for the win for Ricciardo. And Perez didn't qualify yesterday. Had an issue with the car as well. So they've often been firing with one car so far. Bottas has left the pits. Perez still in the pits.
Well, Lindblad, from the high a week ago in Melbourne to the disappointment of, we didn't actually see whether he got spun around or whether he just spun around.
Had a look at it, he spun on his own.
Right, okay.
And then Racing Bulls were worried about clutch damage after that, so parked the car. What it means in the end is he says goodbye to that apex with a load of push down at turn 6.
But in this new world of Formula One, well, he has backed out. But what I was going to say, we've learned that sometimes going, let's say, deep and being off the throttle for longer means you actually harvest a bit more energy. But he's decided there's too much understeer in that car. Tyre prep not quite where he needed it to be.
He's got loads of soft tyres to use as well, new softs, because didn't obviously run at the end of the race there on the softs earlier on, where plenty of teams fitted a set of softs, and also those that ran into SQ3 yesterday burnt a set of softs doing so. So straight out on the softs for Lindblad and plenty of the other runners. A lot of them on used softs though, whereas Lindblad is on the new softs. He's down on miles. So when you've only done 2 laps of practice and then a couple of laps on a medium tyre in sprint quali, not the sprint even, it's difficult for him to catch up.
The visuals of the body language of the cars, they're just more nimble, aren't they? You can really see the smaller, lighter cars, and, well, running onto the outside curb there, dragging the underside, putting the dust up.
What I find interesting is the difference in the attitude of the cars, actually, especially in that sector. So you've got 7, the left, into the right, into the double left, 7, 8, 9, 10. And when we rode on board with Antonelli yesterday, and he was on his provisional pole lap, it was amazing to see how much he was actually harvesting through the left, being very, very neat and tidy to get energy deployment on the back straight. Compared to a few others, look like they're hustling more through that sequence, but they're kind of burning through energy from the battery at that. So everyone's trying to work out exactly when to hustle it as much as possible, show the attitude of the car, and when actually is the best to be a little bit neat, be tidy, be smooth with your inputs, and get the reward later on in the lap.
Well, that's actually one thing about a sprint weekend. There was a lot of learnings came out of the Grand Prix in Melbourne, where McLaren were going, okay, we now understand how Mercedes Grand Prix are using their energy. They now have that from the sprint, so they'll be crunching the numbers back and walking to try and make sure that they've got those learnings deployed in the Grand Prix tomorrow.
Alex, scoffing at your double use of the word learnings again, DC.
I would never scoff at DC. You, however, plenty of scoffing. Verstappen, Gasly, Leclerc, Hadjar, Lawson, Ocon and Hamilton. Hamilton with a used medium, Max Verstappen with a brand new medium tyre, Pierre Gasly with a used soft, Charles Leclerc with a used soft. So we're very much in early running territory. This is the driver who was on pole for the Grand Prix 1 year ago. Very deep into turn 14, not acing it like he did in that final Q3 lap 1 year ago. So time left on the table for Oscar Piastri. Let's see how it stacks up compared to Lando Norris. He's ahead by 0.4 of a second, and used soft tyres for both McLarens. Piastri, Norris, Verstappen, then Gasly, who was standout yesterday in sprint qualifying, and Hülkenberg slots in on a new soft, which is why he's taken his Audi up to second. Let's get a like-for-like comparison with the Brazilian driver Gabriel Bortoleto in the second Audi. Not exactly leaning it on the curb, but sometimes neat and tidy is the fastest way. And Audi second and third, both of the drivers running new tyres. Hülkenberg and Bortoleto behind our benchmark setter, which is Oscar Piastri. On board with Lewis Hamilton. Whoa, and he caught it.
Just looks so low grip out there. Understeering a little bit in, but it was just looked a bit woolly. The Ferrari just missing grip on both axles. We are over 2 seconds away from what Russell did yesterday. So that's probably explaining why the grip level's not there for a few of them early on here.
Could be an element of gusting wind as he went into that corner, speeds peeling off, downforce reducing. Could he gotten long enough through the apex before then the rear came around on him? So it was there wasn't much to tell us that he was sliding until we saw the cat-like reactions.
Yeah, you're right, there's a tail as well at that point, which always means you've got reduced airflow over the car and your aerodynamic surfaces are not singing as best they can.
Big moment for Sergio Perez onto the back straight.
It feels good. The car just had some snaps. 60 on the braking.
So it feels good, apart from the fact that it snaps, which would suggest it's not good. But I like the positivity.
Particularly under braking. So that's where everyone's trying to get the regen done as much as you can on the brake. So you kind of want to have it, not that you're having to correct it, but using as much as you can from the rear axle on the deceleration and the way down the gearbox. Maybe a little bit too much. Again, with the grip level being low, we're 2 seconds adrift of what was managed yesterday. It's probably something that if you've got it a little bit twitchy right now, when the grip comes up, you'll start to mask those problems.
Track temperature's only a couple of degrees, 3 degrees maybe more than it was yesterday. We've had some other track action, but no obvious signs of oil or oil dust out on track. So surprised that a couple of degrees has saw them drop off in performance. It must be more the wind effect.
Kimi Antonelli has the fastest first sector of anyone so far. George Russell is behind him on track, and if they complete their laps to the capability of that Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton is going to be momentarily down into the drop zone as a result of those issues on his earlier runs. Russell takes the fastest first sector of anyone so far. It was a 1-2 lockout in the Australian Grand Prix qualifying session, a 1-2 in sprint qualifying yesterday. Antonelli's time is being compared to Franco Colapinto, because Colapinto is currently the 16th fastest driver.
So Hamilton was also on a set of fairly used medium tyres, which will explain why he was struggling quite as much as it looked, even though he's reporting it's kind of okay. But given, I think, the tyre life, it was all over the place. He's out on new softs now, so that order is going to jump around as everyone starts finding their feet on fresh tyres.
Yeah, actually, not a bad balance to have on older tyres that loosen the rear. You'll definitely bring it all in line with the fresh set. You'll pick up, relatively speaking, more on the rear.
First effort in Q1 complete for Kimi Antonelli, who goes 0.6 of a second ahead of Oscar Piastri. Piastri used old soft tyres, Antonelli on brand new ones. His championship leader. Won only his second sprint race in his Formula One career earlier on, and he goes top of the pile by 0.04 of a second. So now, in the drop zone, Alex Albon, Lewis Hamilton, the driver you're on board with, Fernando Alonso, Valtteri Bottas, Lance Stroll, and Sergio Perez, just hanging on to it, applying the power. So much power. And you drain the battery and use the internal combustion engine as well. Let's see where Alonso can go. He moves up to 17th. Just behind his countryman Carlos Sainz, but ahead of Alex Albon in the Williams. Stroll is ahead of Bottas now as well.
It's a tidy lap, actually, that from Fernando, dragging everything from the Aston Martin that is really, really a long way off it in a straight line. The Honda power unit finding a bit of reliability this week, but they are down on performance. But yeah, you could see Fernando hustling it away on the limit of grip there through that final sector. Everyone else will be out there trying to improve as well, not least Lewis Hamilton on a set of softs. Here we go, sweeping through turns 13. He's going to have a few cars to pick up a slipstream off as well.
Struggled with rear grip a little bit as he was coming off of 13. Again, this sort of gusting wind around the racetrack and the full deployment off that turn. So this is something we've actually seen, Julian, with the Ferrari relative to the Mercedes, and it comes back to what you're saying about Antonelli yesterday in qualifying. It looked really like he was on a build lap. He was just so smooth. The Ferraris are having to hustle.
We saw it from the moment the car hit the ground, actually, in Bahrain, as Hamilton does leap up the order on those softs. The Ferrari is a car that looks a lot more on the edge. The Mercedes traction is really good, and it allows the drivers to be very smooth and precise with their inputs generally. And that's all part of the feedback you then get with energy deployment, where you can use it when you want. You're not sort of jumping around by picking up the throttle and then having to back off it and blend out. You want to be clean and you want to be smooth, and you don't want to have wasted deployment around the lap effectively. Let's see, Norris. Oh, Lindblad's got another issue, so it's not his weekend. Norris, easy flat through 7, brake, and then wait. Not back to full throttle, because there's no need between 8 and 9 now. That'll burn unnecessary battery. Leclerc did that yesterday and ended up derating halfway down the back straight. So you've got to be clever now with how you're driving the cars, and they're all working it out as they go. Feather the throttle, bring it in, and then go. Now you can't back out, otherwise it's all for a waste there. And that looked tidy from Norris.
He's going to drain that battery down as he improves up to 203 miles per hour.
So effectively, if you jump on the gas and then you back off it and you jump on again, you've just burned fuel for nothing, burnt energy for nothing. So that's what the drivers are all trying to understand. And Charles Leclerc was probably the one that most lost out at the end of yesterday's qualifying with it.
Yeah, if you are going to be in that situation, you need it to be, let's say, a more energy-boosting part of the racetrack. So at least if you lift, you will go into a bit of recharge. But yeah, look, they're having to be a lot more patient in the way they drive the apexes.
Charles Leclerc, fastest of anyone so far. He goes over the line and immediately checks where he is on the big screen. The answer is P1, having used a new set of the soft tyres. Leclerc, then Russell, then Antonelli, Hamilton, Norris, Gasly, and then Oscar Piastri's first effort put him into this position. It's Albon, Sainz, Alonso, Bottas, Stroll and Perez in the drop zone at the moment. Leaning on the curve of the 16th corner and going ahead of Pierre Gasly is Oscar Piastri, 4/10 off the pace.
Okay, we've got the top 6 within a half a second. Mercedes with plenty more in the tank, I'm sure. They've only done 1 flying lap to everyone else's 2, and the track's gripping up. At the bottom end, guys, 4 minutes to go, and Arvid Lindblad may well give everyone else behind a chance to sneak through into Q2. He is in a faster car. The Racing Bulls has had a little bit more performance, more downforce than the likes of Williams. And if he's got an issue that he can't actually get back out onto circuit, he's going to be very, very vulnerable sitting there in 16th. And the likes of Albon or Sainz could be in a shootout to try and depose him in a minute.
Yeah, they're the only guys, I think. I know Alonso is only 4/10 away, but it just feels the Astons are just in a test session on their own.
Oliver Behrman in 7th place. Gasly had that position in sprint qualifying. Max Verstappen on an outlap. His teammate as well, Isaac Hadjar, on an outlap. They've only run on new medium tyres. It's the first time they've put the softs on in this session. 3 minutes to go. They're currently 14th and 15th. Lindblad is on an outlap, according to our information.
So Alonso's lap is actually not too bad, the one that he's done so far, 19th, but 1/10 away from Carlos Sainz, his compatriot, and he's within half a second of being the man to knock Lindblad out. But Lindblad's back out on circuit, so possibly there's more in the Racing Bulls car to try and deflate those hopes of those behind.
So he was called back to the pits with a potential issue. Cooked the clutch was Alan Permain's description of what happened earlier in the sprint race after trying to spin the car around as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I do recall it looked like he overshot at that moment. So he may be blindingly fast behind the wheel, but he hasn't had enough spins in Formula One to donut himself back into the field. It's not really something you practice for.
Well, the good thing is you don't get a chance to do that in Melbourne. If you're donutting your way back in the field, you're usually in the hedge somewhere. So here you get a chance to do it, and yeah, overcooked it. But a sprint's the best time to overcook a clutch, I'd say.
Yep, another box ticked in his rookie season.
Yeah, 18 years of age, the driver who last year became the youngest ever winner in Formula 2. 17 years of age when he triumphed in Jeddah. Max Verstappen is down there at the moment in 15th. Isaac Hadjar by default out-qualifying him last week when he spun into the gravel in the first part of qualifying and then came roaring through the field from 20th position into the active aero straight zone. One of 4 available to him on the circuit. This is his first run on soft tyres in Q1.
Yeah, we're just looking at Lindblad. Not too bad in that first sector. Couple of tenths, maybe 3 max away from the fastest, which is Russell. So we'll keep an eye on how his lap. Well, actually, getting him confused with Albon, excuse me.
Yeah, Albon has the personal best in the first sector, as you would expect with the Red Bulls. They've put on softer tyres, so they both have personal best in the first part of the lap. Can Albon, Sainz, Alonso do anything about Lindblad? Sole rookie in the field, currently in 16th place.
So Albon's the first to have a shot, and he is improving around this lap. Sainz is going quicker in the other Williams. They're both desperate to get this car through into Q2, just to run it again and see if they could pick off any stragglers further on into qualifying. As we watch Max Verstappen harvest in towards turn 11. That's the Mercedes trick then from yesterday. It will pay him back on the exit of this corner. So here he goes, waiting, then feeds it in, and now he's got the battery where he wants it by harvesting in towards turn 11. So you're still into a trade-off as Sainz finds more time in the middle sector. This is looking good for Sainz.
So,
yeah, it was very audio visible, the early lift into that turn. Manages to spot his braking nicely into the final hairpin.
So Albon improves to 16th place. He drops Lindblad into the elimination zone. Hadjar goes up to 7th. Like-for-like comparison then with Max Verstappen, who goes into 4th with the fastest final sector. So that was well judged. Final sector, all straights and a hairpin. Let's go to Sainz now. Can he get past his teammate? Can he get himself into the next part of qualifying? Carlos Sainz to 14th to knock his teammate out. And now Arvid Lindblad needs an epic final couple of corners of this racetrack. That's what he's looking for. Alonso personal best, sector 1 and 2. Lindblad out of the final corner. How much has he got? Currently down in 18th. That's good enough for 11th. Colapinto now to the drop zone.
Colapinto and Bortoletto both on faster laps, so they could respond, and this could end up being Sainz.
That was the Aston Martin of Lance Stroll. This is the Aston Martin of Fernando Alonso. Alonso 2 seconds off the pace. And now we've got Colapinto and Bortoletto. Colapinto needed that. The Argentinian driver finds his way through, so Bortoletto responds. And after all of the action, the Williams are demoted once again. Sainz might be clear by about 0.4 of a second to Alex Albon, but he's going out in the first part of qualifying with him as well. Alonso is the lead gaggle of those scrapping at the back. And Bottas will be delighted to be ahead of an Aston Martin. Cadillac weren't expecting that at the start of the campaign. They thought they'd be scrapping amongst themselves. And over the line goes Valtteri Bottas, 20th quickest. The back row will be Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez. They're the 6 to go in the first part of qualifying.
Well, they made a fight of it. They put some other cars under pressure, had to respond right at the end of that qualifying session. But yeah, the difficulties continue for Williams.
Aston Martin as well.
Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, long-term project at Williams with the hope that the new rules could bring something different. And instead, Formula One's 5th fastest team from last year has stepped back into the drop zone when they're included in a conversation that they're out in the first part of qualifying, along with Cadillac and Aston. The order in full: Charles Leclerc ahead of George Russell, then it was Kimi Antonelli ahead of this man's teammate. It was Max Verstappen 4th, Lewis Hamilton 5th, then it was Norris in P6. Impressive laps under pressure for Gabriel Bortoletto and Franco Colapinto. Bortoletto in 7th, Piastri 8th, Hadjar in 9th, Colapinto in the top 10. Then it was Behrman, Gasly, Lindblad. Again, another young driver responding under the pressure of having to improve and making it work. Ocon, Hulkenberg and Lawson. Lawson getting through by a couple of tenths. He's one of the stars of the sprint race earlier on. Confirmation then that in the drop zone, Sainz, who was only 1.1 seconds back, so not miles off at all. Albon really frustrated. He was a really dejected character in the pen, speaking to the media earlier on. Alonso, Bottas out-qualifying Stroll, and his teammate, Sergio Perez. Two-time winner around here, Fernando Alonso, two-time world champion as well. And Alonso back into the garage. The only driver left on the grid who was taking part in the inaugural race here in 2004. Max Verstappen seemingly a lot happier than he was yesterday in sprint qualifying, looking a little bit more like the driver that we've known across the last decade in Formula One.
Yeah, that was an encouragingly close first part of qualifying. We haven't maybe seen everything as yet, but it puts a smile on some of the drivers' faces.
Yeah, it was a good lap.
It was a good lap, Carlos. That's all the car has, isn't it? Let's come back and have a look what we can do for tomorrow.
Thank you.
Carlos Sainz in conversation with James Vowles. Remember, Carlos Sainz had an option to go to Audi, chose Williams, and they'll be trying to fight back through to the sharp end of Formula One. But a tough start to the campaign. Williams, Aston Martin and Cadillac, their teams are out in the first part of qualifying. Okay, let's get some more analysis now. Ruth is down in the paddock.
Thank you, Jake. See, well, that Q1, I think the only thing that we did expect from that was that the bottom six would be that bottom six. But great strategy by all of the teams to run 3 sets of new softs to try to claw their way through to Q2. Now, Q2 is going to be really interesting because the teams at the front are going to be trying to save 2 new softs for the Q3 shootout. So we could expect some jeopardy going into this session. The only team that looks really comfortable out front now is Mercedes. 1 single run on 1 soft tyre. They can afford to go out again in this session. They've got the margin. Everybody else incredibly close to that cutoff, but they're all playing it different ways. Red Bull used a medium before running a 1 set of softs. We had Leclerc on a U set, and going into this session, it's going to be critical for those midfield teams to see whether they're going to use 2 new sets of mediums to try to get out one of the leaders. It looks also like Red Bull have made a step up in performance with their setup. We saw Max up on high stands going into that session, so you can't count them out either of taking one of the top 10 spots in this final shootout.
Thank you, Ruth. Ruth Buscombe having a look at all things strategy for us and picking out that Mercedes indeed just ran the 1 set of soft tyres in that part of qualifying. Gabriel Bortoleto once again showing that he's enjoying the machinery. 2 sets of soft, but good enough to get through into 7th as we now make our way into Q2 in a few moments' time, where we'll decide the top 10 shootout and we'll decide who lines up from 11th to 16th on the grid.
You could easily hear the flip side of the coin at Williams. One driver, when you haven't got the car, it's about doing the best and showing that you're getting the most out of it. And when you've got one driver there really happy with his lap, and Alex Albon very frustrated. He had issues yesterday with the rear axle, struggled to stop the car and struggled with the balance. He actually ended up having a big front lockup that derailed his lap. And again now, I don't think he quite put it all together right at the end of that one.
It's forever been the case, though. I don't doubt that Alex had some adventures on that lap, but if you're half a tenth slower than your teammate, very difficult to go whoop-de-woo. I'm happy with that. You know, you know the car has more potential in it. So, yep, contrasting psychological, I'd say, results from that particular qualifying, but you got to reset now.
And also, in terms of who needed this era to change the team's fortunes the most, Carlos Sainz is a multiple Grand Prix winner. He's taken many podiums in Formula One. Alex Albon, on the other hand, has only taken 2. Sainz has taken 29. So Albon's waiting for that return to the front. Just not happened for Williams at the start of this year.
I still think collectively that's a really strong driver lineup as well. It's so frustrating to see the gains that team have made for the last couple of seasons, and then it unravel at this stage. And James Vowles obviously coming over the radio there to Carlos saying, look, we know it's not you, it's about sorting the car out, and hopefully they can and get themselves back in the midfield fight, because Sainz wasn't miles away from it there. I think really was dragging the most of the performance, but they're just not there. On the other side, I think Aston Martin were further away than I was expecting them in the end, and credit to Bottas for jumping one of them.
Yeah, Valtteri Bottas was the quicker Cadillac driver all the way through last week until qualifying, and then Sergio Perez found something on him. Bottas, his aim tomorrow will just be to finish. He's not done that in either sprint or the Grand Prix so far this year. Green light at the end of the pit lane. Time for Q2 in Formula One for Grand Prix qualifying, the second round of the year at Shanghai International Circuit. Charles Leclerc on track and in your picture.
Yeah, Lando Norris, I think we saw him go out on a set of scrubbed tyres. Verstappen's gone out in a brand new set of the soft compound, so wanting to get a feel and get a time early in this session.
Yeah, they've got 3 sets of new soft to use. The front guys, they used them in sprint qualifying yesterday, so most of the field, you're right DC, have gone out on a scrubbed set, and they're going to bolt on a new set later on. But Max and Isaac Hadjar, the 2 Red Bulls, have gone straight out on a new set, and that's either going to mean that they've only got 1 set for Q3, should they make it, or they're going to wait in the garage if they do a good enough first lap here. So a little bit of pressure to give themselves a fair crack at Q3. They need to deliver on this first run.
The incident at turn 15, potential impeding, no further investigation. So good news for Gabriel Bortoleto and Isaac Hadjar.
Did we see that?
We did not.
We didn't need to, which is the good news.
It's not going to affect things as we make our way into the second part of qualifying. Both drivers listed taking part, and we are watching Kimi Antonelli. So in sharp contrast, when they were last out, Mercedes going to work on the used soft tyres nice and early in this part of the session.
It's reminded me of that incident yesterday. Lando Norris into Kimi Antonelli at turn 1 and said, I was on a push lap. And they went to go see the stewards afterwards, and then Lando explained that he was on a sort of pushing build lap instead.
Yeah, and now you ask, not so much of a push lap.
It was push for a build.
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, nothing came of that. You've got to sort of save your shots at calling the referee to give a penalty. You've got to save them for when they really count.
Lando Norris immediately with the racing driver's instinct to get on the radio, but nothing coming of that. And if you impede a driver on a lap that doesn't really count, you wouldn't expect that. Although we did see a couple of years ago in Qatar, Max Verstappen given a 1-place penalty. Anyway, let's consign that to the history books and watch Kimi Antonelli around the final corner of the racetrack. George Russell's going quicker in the first sector. Going to be intrigued to see in this session whether Antonelli can get closer. Remember, if he takes pole today, youngest ever driver in the history of the championship to take a Grand Prix pole. He's already got a sprint pole in his career, and George Russell rather sticks that topic of conversation in the bin for a bit. He's 4/10 quicker on old soft tyres.
Well, he's meanwhile we'll see what Antonelli can deliver as Leclerc out of the final turn. And well, there is where he opens the timing. It was interesting to see Antonelli still using a lot of the exit curb out of the final turn. That's where he actually went over and lost some time at the restart in the sprint earlier, as we join Hadjar with a big opposite lock moment quite late on the exit of the final hairpin.
Remember, this is new tyres for the Red Bulls, Hadjar and Verstappen, and it's not a great time considering that for Isaac Hadjar. Max was also not rapid in the first part of the lap. He's missing bits in the middle, so it's not coming to the Red Bulls right now.
The world champion Lando Norris goes into 5th position, past Hadjar for those to run, and let's see how Piastri stacks up. Piastri goes behind both, as McLaren do not have the performance, either the understanding of the Mercedes power unit at the moment or the chassis performance. They're behind both Mercedes and Ferrari with the chassis performance, and they do not know how to exploit the power unit like Mercedes do at this stage of the season. Hulkenberg goes into 9th. Russell is topped by 0.3 of a second. Hamilton is ahead of Charles Leclerc. Remember last year, 19.5. Charles Leclerc out-qualified Lewis Hamilton across the season, so that's unusual in their time as teammates. And we saw that yesterday in sprint qualifying. Antonelli with more time to find later on. Verstappen found himself 5th fastest, and he used a new tyre to do so, as over the line and into 6th position, Oliver Behrman, ever since he got to the second half of the season last year, a driver full of confidence, personal best in Grand Prix racing of 4th last year, and he's 6th in the order at the moment, 0.6 off.
Big wheelie from Bortoleto, long way off the final hairpin, so he's obviously had quite a dump of power.
You mentioned Hadjar oversteering on this exit here. Let's see how Lindblad gets on. He's on the edge of spinning up those rear tyres, but that looked pretty good from Lindblad, not having to correct the car like he was out of the final turn there. Runs to the line and goes 12th. But Red Bull don't look like they've really moved on from where they were yesterday. When you consider that's new tyres, with Behrman on new tyres, he split them yesterday. He's splitting them again right now. Gasly out-qualified the Red Bull, so let's see how this Alpine goes.
Always lively when we join Pierre Gasly trackside on a qualifying lap. The one-time Grand Prix winner, who started on a Formula One front row on one occasion in his career. Had a couple of races with Red Bull for a long time. Half a season with them, but for a long time he's been a midfield runner, and he gets ahead of Hadjar and Piastri. Colapinto had a good lap earlier on to get into Q2, but at the moment he's a couple of tenths back on his teammates' effort, currently in 13th.
Colapinto still chasing things in the second Alpine. Lawson feeding in the throttle, couple of cars ahead will just unsight you, especially when one's not doing the same bit of track as you, heading off to the pits there.
Looked like he was slightly wide of apex, looked almost like he was understeering.
Well, he's ahead of his teammate, but not by much. A few hundredths of a second between Lawson and Lindblad.
Yeah, for the future of his career, he needs to be in front of Lindblad. He's not going to be a lot, because clearly there's a lot of speed with Arvid, but that's exactly what he needs to be.
Really by more than a couple of hundredths, I'd say, given Lindblad's struggles so far in terms of mileage this weekend. 1 hour of practice for everyone, but just 2 flying laps for Arvid Lindblad. No time in the sprint. Racing Bulls still with a competitive enough car, but they're not quite where they were in Melbourne.
Lawson using old tyres, according to our tyre graphics, so that would explain the gap, because you wouldn't expect it to be a couple of hundredths, given the weekend that Lindblad's had so far.
Yeah, that makes a little bit more sense. Same is true for a lot of the front runners, which includes Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, 10th place, under pressure in theory, but in reality hasn't used new tyres. Also Pierre Gasly then not on new tyres, so a great lap from him to get ahead of Oscar. That is a shiny new set for him this time as he heads out. Plenty of time on the clock. So McLaren throwing no caution to the wind, not waiting for the last little bit of track evolution, making sure that they're nice and safe out there and are in control of their own destiny.
Yeah, they should be comfortably able to make it through into the top 10 shootout, but it does feel early, you know, other than getting some clean track, there's always a risk, of course, that you're starting a lap as others are coming out of the pits.
The problem is when you've only done a banker lap enough for 10th, it doesn't take much for you to wait for the better bit of track and end up having a yellow flag because someone's had a spin or a breakdown, a mechanical somewhere, or even a little bit of traffic, and suddenly a McLaren is needlessly under pressure. We know the field spread is bigger this year. That McLaren qualified 3rd yesterday in the hands of Lando Norris, so we know they've got the pace to comfortably be through.
Piastri winding up, getting the battery into the state that it needs to be. Lando Norris out there as well. The 2 Ferraris are on the circuit. They're the only ones at the moment, so running early in the final stages of Q2. Still 5 minutes to go. And we still have Hulkenberg, Ocon, Colapinto, Lawson, Lindblad and Bortoleto in the drop zone and also in the pits. So an old set of tyres, not at peak grip for Oscar Piastri, leaves him at risk. And he is a driver with 6 Formula One Grand Prix pole positions, and he started that record here last year when he took his first and went on to win the Grand Prix.
A little bit of weaving there just to try and maintain temperature in those tyres, creating friction. They get all that information available to them on the steering wheel, so they'll know where they are on pressures, surface temperatures, and they just need to make sure the state of charge is correct as they then launch the lap. Not much to do.
It's so complicated at this stage. We saw the fan fallout of Kimi Antonelli's Mercedes a week ago, and Lando Norris said he only hit it because he's got so much work to do on the steering wheel. He was looking down at a part of the circuit where you'd normally be looking ahead.
He was looking at the speed he was doing to try and work out where he had to brake for the turn 3 hairpin. I mean, that's how difficult it is with the deployment being different lap to lap, almost corner to corner. You can't just know it's about 100 meters, and if I'm really brave, I'll brake at 95. it can change by 10, by 15 meters, and that's why sometimes you see people not even nearly making the corners.
You heard on board the underside of the car scraping over the bumps through 7 and 8 for Piastri, who's a tenth and a half back on George Russell. It will be comfortably what he needs to get through into the top 10 shootout, which is the minimum he expects every single time he turns up at a weekend. Charles Leclerc going very, very quick. Again, you can hear the bumps coming out of the long turn 13. Now it's time to drain the battery all the way down. And then once you get rid of it, hope that you've got enough to get to the braking zone in turn 14. The active aero shuts, and there's a couple of corners to home.
Yeah, you could see as the active aero closed, also braking very quickly thereafter. You get a little dive in the front of the car, and then they regen power into that battery so quickly that that gives them some final deployment in those final 2 corners.
Now the lap time falling away for Piastri there. Charles Leclerc goes quickest, and 0.6 of a second between Piastri and Leclerc's effort at that stage. Hamilton looked good over 1 lap, but he's 800ths in arrears to his teammate. Ferrari's first and third at the moment, both Mercedes on outlaps. They'll get the right of reply, and over the line we go with Lando Norris, and he is ahead of his teammate in P5. If you're in the drop zone, it's time to start attacking the racetrack on new tyres if you've got them.
Yeah, not much time left for them to do so, but I would say, again, I don't doubt Mercedes have a little bit more, but the consistency of the Ferraris delivering lap time, they seem to be on top of their systems a lot better than maybe McLaren.
This is better from Ferrari, isn't it? I feel like they're closer. I still think Mercedes, when they wind it up on new tyres, are going to put some distance between them and the rest. We'll see that in just a few moments' time. You can see on your left-hand side, Antonelli through the first sector, and Russell's getting there as well, although he's not doing it very quickly on this attempt. Ferrari look much better off. Will they be able to pick off one Mercedes if one of them doesn't nail it in Q3? They've put a bit of gap to themselves and McLaren.
Nico Hülkenberg has a wonderful record of making it through into the top 10 shootout here. He's only missed out once in the last 6 runnings of the Chinese Grand Prix. That's the last year that we ran this race. He only made Q3 once last year. So pick your favourite stat. He's in the mix at the moment with Isaac Hadjar, a 10th up, 2/3 of the way round. Your battery management is absolutely crucial. Have you, with the team, managed to define when you need to recharge? Do you still have enough around the final corner and across the line? He's missed out by 0.02 of a second. Hülkenberg falls at the second hurdle.
There are plenty going much quicker behind him as well, so that drop zone is going to shuffle around. I feel like Hadjar's got to find some pace, and he is.
Antonelli goes top. Isaac Hadjar is on the brink at the moment. Plenty who could cause him a headache behind, including Gabriel Bortoleto, his old sparring partner in Formula 2 a couple of years ago. This is the driver from Paris who was 3rd on the grid last week in Melbourne, and he remains in P10. Max Verstappen in 7th as it stands, goes up to P6. Bortoleto is the next driver to come across the line in the Audi. He's been capable of real pace so far this weekend. The yellow flag is out.
Bortoleto, I think.
And he's gone all in at the final corner. And where is Bortoleto? The yellow flag is out to ruin the laps, and there he is. We pick him up, and he was having to give it everything into the 16th and final turn, and he's gone off and recovered to the pit lane. Yellow flag out, and everyone having to back out as per the racing rules, and it means that there's no improvement for Hülkenberg, Ocon, Colapinto, Lawson, Lindblad, and Bortoleto finds himself P16.
Colapinto might yet be able to find something. Bortoleto's got out of the way, so we'll see if Gasly's still out there and clearly trying to improve as well, but might not need it. Colapinto's got a chance here to get a second Alpine through.
Yeah, Gasly has a chance. Lawson, Lindblad, they were affected by that yellow flag. Gasly gets to P5. He's loving the Alpine around this circuit. Oscar Piastri's out there again. He's in 8th. Over to Franco Colapinto then, looking for a top 10 appearance, and he misses out by 0.05 of a second. Tight margins, and he's P12.
Yeah, I've got to imagine that Bortoleto has dipped a wheel on the way in, because where he ended up, that's not like he's committed to the corner and then gone wide into the gravel. So he must have been over the right-hand curve, which is taking him down towards the pit lane.
It's a raised curb as well, so it can unsettle you as you turn the car in, getting greedy on the way in.
George Russell saying on the radio something's not right with the car. He's got major understeer. It feels like the front wing is broken. His first sector time was miles off, wasn't it?
Yeah, we saw him on a lap, but it was slow, as you said. Let's see what happened to Bortoleto then. Let's have a look on the right-hand side on the way in. Is he getting on this curb? Only a little bit, but it was maybe enough just to unsettle him with a huge amount of entry speed as well.
Went a long way, went all the way to the barrier.
Yeah, that's going to be a tasty amount of gravel rash as he's bounced his way through. And then, well, enough of contact for them to have some concerns about the gearbox there as you punch the drive shaft towards the internals.
Wasn't on an exceptional lap. He was improving. I don't think it would have been enough to get through. It was a little bit of drift of his teammates, so probably giving it a Hail Mary right at the end just to see, can I find something magic here? And the outcome is this.
Well, at this point, the drivers are not that used to going through gravel in modern Formula One, but you mentioned earlier, we first came here in 2004, so there are areas, that's the famous gravel that Lewis Hamilton got stuck in when he's back in his McLaren days.
So front wing angle checks for Russell here. I mean, if it is something as simple as that, they can put a new one on and go. But they're just checking to see if that is the source of George's issues.
If it's a bigger problem with the active aero, that could affect the battle for pole position. Mercedes looking at the front wing for George Russell, out in the second part of qualifying. Hulkenberg, Colapinto, Ocon, Liam Lawson, Arvid Lindblad and Gabriel Bortoleto, who had the spin. We have our top 10 shootout sorted, understood and ready to attack the racetrack. Antonelli, Charles Leclerc, George Russell, Lewis Hamilton, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Oliver Behrman and Isaac Hadjar. Of those that have joined our main contenders, the midfield bolters, if you like, this week, Pierre Gasly and Oliver Behrman. Gasly has managed to make the top 10 shootout in both qualifying sessions so far this weekend, Grand Prix and Sprint. That's the driver who, with the slowest car in the field last year, reached Q3 on 10 occasions. No longer the slowest car in the field, and Gasly, very experienced these days. Commentated on his Formula 2 campaign, his GP2 championship winning year. Driver who made his debut in 2017, using all of that experience to set the 6th fastest time. And there he is. I've been talking about him. Spoke to him last year about the responsibility when you're plumb last and it's all going wrong, about being team leader. And he said, well, we can see the data from next year's car. We know better things are coming, so it's just important to accept that we're last, show some leadership and wait for the better times to turn up.
Yeah, that's maturity of having a number of seasons in Formula One. You've got to deal with what you've got, and you're a member of the entire team.
Okay, we're a couple of moments away from Q3. It is time to start Q3 in a few minutes. We'll be setting the sharp end for the second Grand Prix of the year. Before we do that, let's get some analysis and some insight from Ruth Busker.
Fascinating session, and congratulations to Behrman and to all the cars that managed to sneak through in that session. 0.903 off the fastest in that session, which was Antonelli. Now, George Russell set his fastest lap on the first run on used tyres, complaining of contact. The mechanics there in the garage trying to get him out on track. Now, if he can fix that, he's in a great position because Mercedes have 2 new soft tyres. They've saved 2 of their 4 sets for Q3. So have Ferrari, so have McLaren. Now, interestingly, Red Bull, they've made some progress since this morning, but both Red Bull cars, Max Verstappen and Isaac Hadjar, who got through to Q3, only have 1 soft set left. same as the other cars from the midfield. It's interesting to call Max Verstappen a midfielder, isn't it? That's a new one. Or going into this session, I'd expect 2 runs of one-time lap. Guys that have 2 new sets will go new, new. Everybody else is going to go used, new. I can't wait to see if those Mercedes guys can manage to fix that rear front wing. What about you, Jakesy?
I want to see a fair fight for pole position, Ruth, as Flavio Briatore pat on the shoulder for his Argentinian driver Franco Colapinto, who missed out in the end by a couple of hundredths of a second. So getting closer, but ultimately we know it's going to be close at the end of Q2. Certainly feels like the gaps have come down. I say that with trepidation, DC, because we know what Mercedes can do in Q3.
Well, this is what we're about to find out, I think. They were always going to be confident they'd be in a situation where they'd be in the final part of qualifying. So have they got a bit more they're going to deploy, or genuinely have Ferrari been able to use the experience of the sprint to make some modifications to the car? They come out of Parc Fermé, then go into Parc Fermé in this qualifying session. So, yeah, I'm enthused by the fact that they definitely seem closer. I was also encouraged to see that Flavio's doing cuddly.
I knew you were going to remark upon that. He didn't do that the first time around, did he?
No, I think maybe the reviews from Drive to Survive have come in and he's gone, maybe I need to be a little bit nicer. Not nicer, that he is nice, but I mean a bit cuddlier.
Modern management from Flavio Briatore.
Show some affection.
Who'd have thought it? Green light at the end of the pit lane. The top 10 shootout, Q3, is underway. And the drivers are heading out onto the circuit. Shiny new Pirelli tyres attached to the car. Lewis Hamilton has looked a lot happier with this type of Formula One regulation set. If you consider that he had a couple of wins in the ground effect era, but we were used to seeing him win week in, week out. Look at low-speed corners there. The Ferrari is very quick, and it's Russell. Stopped!
Something's not right.
Looks okay now.
It's not. Just check boost. I've got a massive engine brake in here.
So you've got the new hazard lights on the car for this year, but the crowd in consternation. The dominant man so far, 2 wins from 2 in Formula One 2026, is static. He's not out, he's not done, but David Coulthard, Mercedes need a reset, or we are going to have a new pole sitter, a new name at the front.
Well, the upside of modern Formula One, he has the ability, if he can reset, to start that car using its own electrical energy.
He's moving, yeah, he is moving. Had a look out of the commentary box, and George Russell has got a fix from the team. Now, reported a problem.
Still not happy. Single gear, no acceleration. This might be a limp mode to get him back to the pits. Long way to go.
Yeah, long way to go when you are at this, as DC describes, a safe mode just to crawl back. The door swings open for a moment of Formula One history. The youngest ever Grand Prix pole position holder is 21 years of age.
I cannot shift the gears. Stuck in first.
Well, first they'll get him home, get him back to the pits. That's going to take a couple of minutes, though. So unless they can find another reset whilst he's out on track, it may well be he needs to come back into the pits and be plugged into the umbilical and see if that refires the system.
He's not out of it, but he is going to have a compromised Q3. There is a major headache for Mercedes to solve, and Kimi Antonelli, 2 clean laps here, could rewrite the record books. Monza 2008, Sebastian Vettel, the youngest driver to ever take a Grand Prix pole. Kimi Antonelli is 19 years of age. Can he find 2 clean laps up against the Ferraris and put his name at the front of a Grand Prix field for the first time in his young Formula One career? That is what is now on offer for the boy from Bologna, who was rushed through. Skipped Formula 3, had a single year in Formula 2. Toto Wolff did not want him in a midfield team, wanted him in the Mercedes Works team. And can he now carry the team's colours to the front? The time to beat for everyone out there is a 1:32.322. If they can't, Antonelli rewrites the record books over to Ferrari. and they've looked much better this weekend compared to last. They were scrapping for sprint victory earlier on, and it's Charles Leclerc across the line. He's 0.3 of a second away. The gap, the Q3 gap, reappears. What about Lewis Hamilton? Magic around this track in the past, and he is 0.6 of a second away. The top three all setting that time on new Pirelli tyres. Can George Russell get out, or will it be Antonelli's day in the sun?
Yeah, well, Russell's just making his way into the pit lane. His team out there ready to pull him back into the garage. There will be enough time, assuming this is an electronic reset. The only other thing that could explain not being able to shift gears, of course, is a hydraulic issue.
Lewis Hamilton fighting his teammate. He's having lively moments all weekend long. We go through 9 and 10, he's swapping all over the place.
Yeah, we saw that earlier in this session, but it came, let's say, there. He went into the oversteer moment. That was on power. He's corrected, taken him out onto the curb, picked up some dust, kept his foot in, and there's further movement. And then when he's braked down into 10, it was tidy there for Leclerc. You can see him fighting the wheel of acceleration.
That is the sound of a turbocharged engine of Pierre Gasly. 50-50 split between electrical power and the internal combustion engine in Formula One in 2026. Gasly just been swinging for the fences all the way through. He's coming up to the 16th and final corner of the racetrack, and it's used set of tyres for him, so he's going to have one punchy run later on. That's to get his eye in. That's why there's a 1.7 second gap. Lando Norris fully attacking on. This is new tyres. This is second on the grid for Norris, who came alive in the top 10 shootout yesterday and does so once more. Piastri slightly on the back foot so far. You come to Q3, you come to the front row. The Australian driver on pole position a year ago steps forward when it matters. Now to the Red Bulls. Can Hadjar get up there? 6th position, and Max Verstappen is over the line. He goes ahead of his teammate, and it's Kimi Antonelli with a 2/10 buffer. Oscar Piastri ahead of his McLaren teammate. We will get to George Russell in a moment. It's Ferrari, Red Bull, old tyres for Behrman and Gasly, and there's no time on the board for the man who's topped every single session for 7 days in Formula One. Is that about to change?
Yeah, well, the wheels came off and they've gone back on. If they felt there was not a chance of getting that car out, then they would have started their process already of trying to engage with the FIA to make the fixes. But it looks to me as if they've done a kind of reset, and it'll be one flying run for Russell.
Oscar Piastri, a reminder for you of what we've been telling you earlier in the session. This is where he began his run of pole positions, all taken last season. His 3rd year of Formula One last year. He took 6 of them whilst battling for the title. He eventually finished 13 points back in a 3-way fight that went all the way to the last lap of the last race. It wasn't certain until Lando Norris came over the line in P3. So what car does George Russell have underneath him? In pre-season testing, there were a couple of mechanical gremlins for Mercedes. They looked very, very strong in Melbourne. George Russell taking victory earlier today in the sprint race. But the main event is the Grand Prix. That's what we're setting the grid for, and there's still work going on.
Yeah, look, those are the short stands they're thinking about putting underneath that car. That isn't a good sign, but that said, the blankets have been taken off.
There's clear, fervent chatter you can hear and see.
That's the umbilical cord, the connection from the car back to all of the main frame systems.
So Russell has made Q3, so it would be 10th on the grid. Steering wheel change now as they seek to find an answer.
This seems like, let's try everything, let's throw everything at it.
So the electronics on the steering wheel sometimes can have a different impression. Very expensive, those steering wheels, by the way. It's not a cheap spare to throw at the car.
No, not at all, but just actually reflecting, you could hear the engine running, and I think that was very much a case of they were trying to engage a gear whilst on the short stands.
Well, Russell will go into a one-time lap situation. He will stick to the sequence, but will he have a car underneath him to attack? We will see whether Oliver Bearman can hang on to P8. Gasly did not have a new set of tyres. He will get that, we believe, for the end.
Well, that's reassuring for both Haas and Alpine that once again, like we saw yesterday, Bearman and Gasly being in the hunt for that top 10, not looking based on that they're fighting the Red Bulls, but they're certainly fighting each other.
Lando Norris emerges from the pit lane. We're looking outside the commentary box window to see whether George Russell will take to the racetrack. Others forming up in the queue, slowly trailing out onto the circuit. Antonelli has gone, Russell has not. 4 minutes to go. There's Marcus Dudley, he's race engineer. Here are the Ferraris.
That didn't look like a face of someone that felt they'd solved the problem. We're looking directly down into the Mercedes garage from our commentary box as all of the other cars go out to start their prep laps. No movement from Russell's Mercedes.
Ticking down. The team continuing to look at the side of the car as you look at Max Verstappen taking to the circuit, currently in 6th position, a second away from Antonelli's benchmark. Antonelli will know that 2/10 puts him close, but not certain. Piastri, 6 pole positions in Formula One. Lando Norris knows how to get there as well, 16 times. He's been at the front, and still Russell remains in the garage. Antonelli going early, so you can see there his personal best, couple of front rows, including last week, and he hopes to repeat it once again.
This is his best chance. Still not seeing any movement in that Mercedes garage or Russell. Yeah, now there is. Now Russell's car is being dropped down.
So, a split moment for the two Mercedes. Russell ventures into the pit lane. Antonelli goes across the line. He will have 2 runs at this one. Russell will have 1. The 19-year-old versus the championship leader. A pole position on the line. And Antonelli's been put in the shade a little bit. In the last couple of days, we've run a sprint race. We've run a Grand Prix. We've had some qualifying sessions. And Antonelli is 100th back on his personal best through the first sector of the racetrack. The McLarens have stepped forward. Can Antonelli leave them all out of reach?
Well, this could be strategic, of course. He could have realised as Norris goes marginally quicker in that first sector. But remember, it's all about how you harvest, how you deploy, how you deliver the overall energy that you can for the lap. And, well, as he goes about a little bit quicker in the middle sector, not many corners now could stand between him and his first pole position in a Grand Prix.
It would be a big moment if he could achieve it. Norris is not far away. Antonelli looking for a clean lap. Norris looking for a great lap. It would have to be something sensational for McLaren or Ferrari to deny Mercedes, but Russell is on an outlap. Antonelli is hoping to seal some history now. A little correction of the steering wheel. He said he got a bit emotional sometimes when he was in the fight at the front last year. This is his 2nd season in Formula One. Kimi Antonelli to the line, and Antonelli takes it further away. Is that the lap to become the youngest ever Grand Prix pole position holder? Norris will have something to say about it. Antonelli holds the fastest time with 30 seconds to go. Norris comes across the line. He can't improve his position. He can't climb to the front row. What about Charles Leclerc? 27 pole positions in Formula One. It won't be pole position this time, but it is a front row. Lewis Hamilton tries to fight back. Across the line we go. He climbs to the front row, to the joy of the crowd. And now Gasly on new tyres, pushing on. Gasly gets ahead of the Red Bull pair with another fine lap in a weekend that's been full of them. Bearman now gets up to 7th. You've got the Red Bulls, they're pushing on. And George Russell is at the bottom of your picture. Can he do anything to displace his teammate? A car that was ailing at the start of Q3. Over the line with Isaac Hadjar. He gets ahead of Bearman. He would have expected that. The checkered flag is waving. Next up is Max Verstappen, who's into 7th. Can Russell find purple sectors when it matters? We're going to get an answer. He's got to find a 1/10 of a second, or it's history for Antonelli.
Yeah, he was a little bit wide coming out of the throttle application of 12 into 13. Has he saved enough energy to win it back on the straight?
The hairpin of 14 is ahead. Then 15 is an easy squirt on the throttle. A left-hander of 16 is the difference. Russell trying to knock Lewis Hamilton off the front row, trying to take back-to-back pole positions in Formula One, unleashing all of the power. Here comes the question. Is it history for Antonelli, or is it a comeback for George Russell? Across the line, he's missed out. He's missed out. And the youngest ever driver to take a Formula One Grand Prix pole is Kimi Antonelli at 19 years of age. He takes the record from Sebastian Vettel. There is the history boy. Antonelli does it. Russell climbs back to the front row. It's Hamilton in 3rd, Leclerc in 4th, Piastri in 5th, and Norris in 6th. But the youngest Grand Prix pole sitter in F1 history.
That's a pole position, mate.
Yeah, let's go, man.
Woo. Well, he may be the youngest ever pole sitter, but he's taken it in his stride. I think I would have gone up a couple of octaves on that woo.
Wow, what a story for Antonelli, who has taken pole at 19 years of age, and he will start his 26th Grand Prix from the very front. Well, it's all normal at Mercedes. Oh, don't worry about it. It's only the youngest pole sitter in the history of the World Championship, which started in May 1950, but that's special. Toto Wolff utterly vindicated by that. Rushed Antonelli through the formula. Sprint pole last year, Grand Prix pole this.
Yeah, can't take it away from him. But what also we can't take away, steady comeback from George Russell. Didn't get that first run and had to go out, discover where the car was. We heard him complain about understeer, something not quite right with the car. Then we had that technical problem, and he'll have that banked away in his justification of 2nd. But what a great pole position from Kimi Antonelli.
Well, he kept it very, very tight in the first 2 sectors and then made the difference at the end. He will be the first Italian driver on pole position since 2009. Giancarlo Fisichella lining up at the front, up against Kimi Räikkönen in the battle for the win in Belgium 2009, which went the way of Ferrari, but today belongs to Antonelli as Russell comes back. Could have been 10th, could have been a real issue for Russell. There's a lot of work there, but the battle line's redrawn for the 2nd Grand Prix of the season. Antonelli on pole by 0.2 of a second. Then it's Hamilton, Leclerc, Piastri and Norris. Gasly out-qualifies the Red Bulls. Verstappen ahead of Hadjar, and Oliver Behrman rounds out the top 10. Kimi Antonelli has rewritten the record books. He's a 19-year-old pole position holder in Formula One. No one has ever done that before. He takes the record from Sebastian Vettel, set at Monza 2008, and becomes the first Italian on pole position in Formula One for a Grand Prix since Giancarlo Fisichella in 2009. Oscar Piastri out-qualified his teammate Lando Norris. He will start 5th on the grid tomorrow. And then we have Charles Leclerc ahead of him, Lewis Hamilton ahead of him, and the Mercedes front row lockout. You just look at the result, you're like, oh, Antonelli beat Russell, but Russell had 1 attempt, Antonelli had 2, and Russell in the end finding a lap good enough for a 1:32.286. Pivotal for him that they got him back out. Be fascinating to hear from Russell what sort of condition that car was in, but Antonelli doing the job when it mattered. Gave himself a great foundation with that first lap and improved it on. And let's now hear from the driver who's taken his first pole position, talking to Jolyon Palmer.
Okay, well, I'm down here with Formula One's youngest ever Grand Prix pole sitter, Kimi Antonelli. Congratulations. You've just beaten Sebastian Vettel's record. How was it out there?
Yeah, it was a pretty clean session. So, you know, really happy. Of course, unfortunately, George had an issue in Q3, so it would have been cool to see him with 2 sets. But yeah, I think was a really good session. Clean one, no mistake, and looking forward to the race tomorrow.
How could you keep it calm? Were you aware of what was happening on George's car, or were you just so focused on yourself there?
Well, I saw he had the issue, but I just tried to keep my focus, to stay calm, and try to deliver a good lap, and which was at the end.
And a record-breaking lap. Well done, Kimi.
Thank you.
George, speaking of the issues, I mean, that was a difficult session. It looked like already in Q2 it wasn't straightforward, but you got out of there in the end. You managed to get a front row out of it.
Yeah, definitely damage limitation. I mean, in Q2, the front wing broke. Was wrapping our heads around that. Then obviously went out in Q3, stopped on track, car wasn't restarting, couldn't change gear, and then just really happy to be standing here because you know, started to the last lap, had no battery, no tyre temp, no nothing. So, but the team have done a really great job to get us into this position. It could have been much worse. So. Very glad and well done to this guy, first pole. So.
Well, you've been formidable so far this season. Are you guys going to put on a fight, bit of a show out front for us tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously we need to take care of the guys in red as well. They were super fast off the line, so I'm sure Lewis is going to be pretty dicey at the beginning of the race. But I think for us to try and keep it clean, have a good race, try and put on a good race for the fans, and see what we can do.
All right, well done, George. Which brings me nicely to Lewis. In the top 3, you love it here in China, I know. It's been a great circuit for you in the past, and that was a big lap at the end. I saw the moment you had on the first one in Q3, but you put it together when it mattered.
Yeah, it was actually a really tough qualifying, a bit harder this one with the wind. It's so gusty today, so putting the laps together was challenging, and Charles putting in great laps. These guys were putting in great laps, so I'm really, really happy with to be up here and grateful to be up here with these guys. They've been rapid so far this season, but we did some good work. The engineers did some great work over the break, and we managed to get a little bit closer to these guys. So that's a real positive. We take that forwards.
And the gap was really coming down as well, as you said. Have you got some powder still dry for the race tomorrow for a fight?
It's still going to be a challenge, but I'm sure we'll have some fun. I'm looking forward to it. We'll have a lot of fun. Learn a lot in the sprint race, so let's hope tomorrow is not as windy as this, and our goal is to try and break the gap between these guys somehow.
All right, well done, Lewis, and thank you, everybody. Good luck for the race tomorrow.
Jolyon Palmer in conversation with fan favourite Lewis Hamilton, championship leader George Russell, and the man who's just got a hug from Dad, Kimi Antonelli, Formula One's youngest ever Grand Prix pole position holder. He will line up at the head of his 26th Grand Prix, 19 years of age, and everyone behind him. 19 years and 202 days. He takes the record from 4-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, who loves his place in the Formula One history books, but always appreciates a great driver. That is what we have seen on track, and Antonelli has had some serious work to do, hasn't he? Dramatic times with the crash a week ago, issues earlier on with the tricky getaway, but when he lines up for the start in the second Grand Prix of 2026, it's his. He's 8 meters ahead of his teammate and will look up to the lights with an unobstructed view. A fine way to handle the pressure. He mentioned in Singapore last year where he had a shot at pole, Russell took it that day, that the emotion got to him. Not today. A cool head and a moment to savor. Mercedes taking pole position for both Grand Prix, for the sprint, and the front wing working for both drivers in the end. Kimi Antonelli knowing he had a little bit of assistance with the issues for his teammate, but you've got to take that moment when it comes your way, and that is a moment of Formula One history. Kimi Antonelli opens his account, now 1 sprint pole and 1 Grand Prix pole. At the magnificent facility at Shanghai International, let's confirm your qualifying grid. Kimi Antonelli 19 years of age and a Grand Prix pole position holder. George Russell locking out the front row. Only got one run in Q3. It was enough for the front row. Lewis Hamilton out qualifying Charles Leclerc. He only did that 5 times in the entirety of last season. And then you've got Oscar Piastri ahead of Lando Norris. Pierre Gasly, great efforts, but an Alpine, the 10th fastest car last year, 7th ahead of the Red Bulls. Verstappen, then Hadjar, and Behrman again in Q3. Strong from him. Hulkenberg was ahead of Franco Colapinto and Esteban Ocon. Lawson and Lindblad had their laps interrupted by the yellow flag caused by the spin for Gabriel Bortoleto, P16 tomorrow. Carlos Sainz out-qualified teammate Alexander Albon, and then it was Fernando Alonso. Valtteri Bottas got a Cadillac ahead of an Aston. Back row of the grid is Lance Stroll and Sergio Perez. Well, my thanks to David Coulthard, Jolyn Palmer, you for watching, and Mercedes for putting on an unexpected battle. The pack has got closer, but there's a new name at the front in Formula One qualifying. At 19 years of age, congratulations, Andrea Kimi Antonelli.